Hello everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Cassie. Today I have a couple of slimline cards for you that I want to share, making some envelopes and the cards, and we're going to be using some of these new to me Trinity products. So this new set is called So Appreciative, and I love it, and it has a matching die set to go with it, so I couldn't resist. And then we're also going to be using the Slimline envelope die, which I've showed before, but I just love this. Anytime I make Slimline, I'm going to totally bring this in to make some envelopes. We're also going to be using these two pattern papers by Brutus Monroe. One's called Bold Rainbow, the other Neon Glow. I'm going to show you how you can take a 6x6 piece of pattern paper and you can use it on a slimline. All right, so let's get started with our cutting. I'm going to cut this down to 4¼ inches because typically a slimline would be 8½ inches tall. And then I'm going to cut that in half to be 3 inches. We're going to stack that up. And yeah, it's going to have a seam in the middle, but you won't see it. It won't really make a difference. And then I'll go ahead and trim out my other piece of paper that I want to use, just so that we can have our cards kind of going at the same time. So once I figure out which one I want to use, there's so many beautiful patterns in both of those paper packs. I cut that again to 4¼ and then split that in half at 3 inches. And it's not going to matter that those don't really line up because there's going to be enough of a gap in the middle or something in the middle to break up the pattern. For my slimline, there isn't really typically like an absolute set size. I just keep mine at 8½ inches and then cut 7 inches. So then I'm going to take that and score that at 3½ inches. And I'm doing this on my Score Buddy. If you have a Score Pal, it'll work better, but you just have to flip it around. You can do it on one of these smaller ones. And then I will just make sure that crease is good. And then I'll do it with the other one as well. So then you've got basically a 3½ inch card that goes to 8½ inches. And that's about how I like to do my slimline. It just basically needs to fit inside of a business envelope. All right, so this part of the envelope die, the slimline envelope die, is just cool. It cuts out this scalloped border that you can put on your cards. So I lined that up perfectly, used a little bit of purple tape, and then I'm going to put that into my Gemini. If you have a regular, like a smaller size die cutting machine, you can do it. You're just going to have to shift your die inside your machine. But with the Gemini, you can do it just fine. So then you're going to have this really cool border that'll go all the way around the outside of your slimline card. And so then I'm going to do that again with this purple. And these are just cardstock. This is cardstock that I had in my stash. Just trying to slowly go through all that stash cardstock. I think a lot of this was Stampin' Up. So yeah, now I've got those two borders and we're going to get ready to start adhering our pieces to the front of our card. So here I'm just using liquid glue on the one piece, and I'll put that down at the bottom. It can go all the way flush to the bottom. And then I'll do the same thing with the other piece, just leaving a white border around the edges. If you don't have a border die for your slimline, this actually would work fine too, because then all it does is just put a border on both the right and the left hand side, and it's not a big deal. So yeah, I have that seam in the center, but we'll cover that up later. I'm going to use some more liquid glue to adhere down our scalloped border, and eventually I have to switch glues. This one ends up getting clogged, which I really do like this glue, but when it gets clogged, I'm usually too impatient to try and get it unclogged while I'm in the middle of creating, so I'll just grab a different glue. I do have a little bit of something showing on that edge, so I'm going to take that and just trim off that little hair using my Tim Holtz guillotine trimmer, and no big deal. And then we'll do the same thing with the other card. So yeah, it looks kind of funky right now, but that's just simply because we haven't put anything in there. So yeah, and I'll trim off that excess as well. You can see that I have a decent sized little border there. I'm going to grab my mini Misty and I'm going to put 2 of the stamps from that So Appreciative stamp set into it. I'm going to stamp my images down using some Memento Tuxedo black ink because I want to do some Copic coloring. So I'll ink those up a couple times since these are brand new stamps. And then I'll pull that out, and then I'm going to stamp out some of the borders as well. I, in my mind, had something set up. I wanted a bunch of stars, so I stamp them out about 7 or 8 times because I wanted, I don't know, like I said, I had something different in my mind. I'd end up going a different route, but it's okay. Those were easy to color. So I'll stamp out 7 right now. I end up having to stamp another one later because I colored one of them wrong. But then I'm going to take the heart border and I'm going to stamp that out a couple of times as well for one of the other cards. and then we'll get to coloring. So I'll start with those hearts. We're going to use some RV25. I just tried to match up to my pattern papers the best that I could. So, and these are bigger hearts, so I'm going to bring in a darker shade just for some shadowing. Even though with the stars, I think those are smaller images, so I don't bring in, just all I do is one color. So once I get both of those sets of hearts colored, I'll bring in the RV29 and just basically add a shadow on that left-hand side of each of those hearts. And then we'll move on to some more coloring. I'm going to color the hearts for this first Thanks for Being You. And I love this line of stamps that they have. I think they're just awesome. They're fun to color. They take up almost an entire card front, and it's just a bold sentiment, bold way of saying your greeting. For my yellow, I brought in YR31, and then my darker shade is Y35. I'm just going to blend that out a little bit. And then we'll bring in our next color, which is going to be this BG01. So you can see I already colored one of those sets of stars wrong. I wanted them to be blue because they're going to go on this one specific pattern paper. So then I will eventually color all the rest of those stars that exact same color. I'm coming in with some BG13 for the thanks. And I don't add any shadowing to any of these words. You could absolutely do that if you wanted to, but I thought it was fine just to leave it as it was because that pattern paper in the background just had a lot of color. And it can be a little bit difficult to color some thinner lines like this, especially if you have a brush nib like I do on my Copics. If you had a bullet nib, it'd be a lot easier. But here I'm finding that I have to do just the tip in some of those areas, and then I can add a little bit of pressure if the line ends up being a little bit bigger. So here's where I can add a little pressure, and then I'm having to bring in just the tip, a little more pressure, but it's good practice. So maybe eventually I'd be able to write my own scripted words. Probably not. That takes practice, and to be honest, I'm not going to do that. But I do love that other people can do it, and I think these two word stamps are just awesome. And I have a couple others. You've seen it. It's the Folded Hug. I love that one. And then I have another one that I have to ink up, and I'm itching to do it. So these are just fun, easy cards to do, and you can add a lot of color to them as well, because you can color each of your letters a different color if you wanted to, or just the words themselves, which I stick to just the words right now. I'll bring in that RV29 for the I Appreciate words. And again, this is one where I have to be a little bit more careful because the lines aren't super thick. So I don't want to go out of the lines too much. But if you do with your Copics, you can fix that with a jelly pen. All right, now I'm going to bring in the matching dies, which I just think is so cool when you have matching dies for your words. And I'll tack those down with some purple tape. And I will have to run this through my die cutting machine just a few times because I have so many of those stars on there. But that's okay. And I'll tack all those down. I'm actually even going to tack down this border on the pink, and I'm going to tack down another border on the purple because I want to add more words. I just figured they were all in there, we might as well. And I'll show you a little trick. So I am going to, now that that's die cut on that purple, I'm going to put the die cut right back into the negative piece and put it into my MISTI. And then I can line up the word on there because the word is a very straight word. It won't fit on that banner very well. So all you have to do is manipulate that. So all I'm doing is taking it off the door and manipulating it until I see that it's going to fit nicely on that banner. Now I do have a little bit of a problem with this banner simply because I did use purple tape and I didn't realize that I had gone over the top of the banner. So the purple tape the purple cardstock picked up some of that purple tape tackiness. And even with the magic powder bag, it didn't help a whole lot. So I'll show you here in a second. So I stamp it down, stamp's fine. And then I'll pick it up with my reverse tweezers and I'll put some of the embossing powder on it, but you can see it just was too messy. So I end up having to re-die cut it and re-stamp it. And then I do it on the pink and the purple. I die cut out a circle using some of my cream cardstock that I had in my stash. I'll just glue that down and see that seam is gone. And it really doesn't matter that the patterns don't match up perfectly. They almost look like because they're such a big center, it really doesn't matter. And I'm going to put some Scrapbook Adhesive 3D foam squares on the back of this one. And then I'll peel off all the release paper on that, and I'll tack that down to the front of my circle. and I'll use some liquid glue to adhere down the little hearts and the "You're the Best." And then, of course, we have to do the inside of the card as well. I've gotten to that point. I just can't not. So I'll take the leftover piece of cardstock that I had from this 6x6 pattern, and I'll just tack that down to the inside on both sides so I can write on both sides if I want. And then I'll take the leftover hearts and I'll glue those down to the top. And then we're going to move on to the other one. So I'm going to cut one of the stars in half because I need it to go all the way across, and it's just not long enough to do that. So I cut it down, and then I'll just tack those down with a little bit of that liquid glue. Here's where my I Appreciate You is going to go over the top of that one as well. But instead of using the 3D foam squares, this time I'm going to use some fun foam. So since I have matching dies to go with this, I'll grab out my matching die, and I'll run that through my die cutting machine over that fun foam, and then I have this perfectly matched die cut. So I'll use my liquid glue to put that all over the back of my die cut, or the front of my die cut, and then I'll tack down my cardstock to the front of that. So this just has a little bit of lift, and then I'll tack that down using that same liquid glue. And then we're going to take those two things of stars and we'll tack those down as well. But I won't stop there. I do have to embellish the inside, and I don't go too crazy. I just had all those stars left over. So I will take those stars, a couple of them, and I will put one on top and one on the bottom, along with the "You're the Best." So we'll do that here in a second. But now that everything's dry, this is where we'll go in with the inside. I could have done that with the pattern paper again, and I actually wish that I would have. I thought I was going to do that with both, but I forgot about it, to be honest. So I'll just tack both of those down, and then I'll put the "You're the Best" right above that bottom set of stars. And that'll finish off the insides. I do want to embellish both of these, so I am going to bring in some of the Trinity embellishments. This one here is the fortune teller. I just love it. And then this one here is the springtime rainbow. These are flat back sequins. Love those. So I'll just take my crystal katana and tack those down with the liquid glue. And then I'll also do that with the springtime sequins. And then that'll finish the cards, but we're not gonna stop there because we're gonna do the envelopes. So if you take an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock, you're gonna be able to get almost all of your pieces on there. You will have a big center piece, one of the side flaps, the top flap, and then your bottom flap will all fit on an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock. And this works with your Gemini. If you don't have a Gemini and you have a regular machine, you can do it, but you will definitely need to cut your paper down. And then I went ahead and cut out one more side piece, and I did it with both the purple cardstock and that pink cardstock. Now I'm just adding a little bit of embellishment with a jelly roll pen, just a few dots on the word "you" because I felt like it needed a little something, and I like how that turns out. Just a couple dots here and there. And then we're going to get ready to assemble our envelopes. And I'll just show you one because it's basically the same for both. I love how the die will score the lines that it needs to score on all the pieces that need scoring. And then I would suggest that you use a heavy duty glue. You could use a liquid glue like I'm doing, or you could use like a score tape or something like that, as long as it is a heavy duty glue because you don't want your envelope falling apart in the mail. So this is the Nuvo Deluxe glue. And once that stuff dries, it's not going anywhere. And then I just adhere down the side flaps first. That's what I do. And then I'll do the bottom flap. And then once I have the bottom flap on there, I'll do the top flap. So that takes care of all the pieces. And then I just love how these come together. And it's great. I know the die is a little bit pricey, but it's a huge die. It comes with the outline of friend and hello and also the words themselves. And then it also has that scalloped border die that I used. And you can make your own slimline envelopes because if you buy the cutesy slimlines, they're like $1 a piece. So this is such an economical way. If you plan to make a lot of slimlines, this die is for you. All right, and I'll do the same thing with the purple or the pink. And then here are our cards. They're all set, all ready to go. I love how these turned out. They were quick and easy, really, and I'm so happy with them. So if you liked this video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. I always appreciate all that you guys do, all the love and support that you leave. Using my affiliate links, that all helps keep this channel going, so I do appreciate it, and I appreciate all of you. And I will see you very soon in the next video. Thanks for stopping by.